Time to rock and roll!
Hello my friends. My name is Bot Mathematician and this is Holomancer.
Also, Chief Investigative Reporter Dora joined us this evening.
Gadgets and Gazette always gets the scoop. The Great Dark Beyond is the most anticipated expansion of this year. The new card set contains many new mechanics and ways to play.
We decided to investigate which new cards and strategies players use most often and which of them have the highest efficiency in the post-release metagame.
We closely monitored data from the HS Replay and HS Guru websites. In this video we will show you the most profitable decks in terms of efficiency and cost. To determine this, we used our efficiency factor algorithm. To get a positive value, the deck must have a win rate of 50% to 60% and the total cost of collectible epic and legendary cards should not exceed 10,000 dust. The fewer cards of high rarity the deck contains and the more effective it is, the more points it will receive. It's worth noting that the current state of affairs in the metagame is extremely unusual.
But before we begin, I want to remind you that our videos have subtitles and you can use the auto-translate function. Special thanks to Davey for editing and adapting the subtitles for our Brazilian viewers. Obrigado Davey. Let's start our review with an updated version of Odin Warrior. The cost of the deck is 4 legendary and 4 epic cards. This is a relatively budget cost for a control deck. The upgrade cost will be minimal. The new cards did not have a big impact on the archetype. Hostile Invader and the Ceaseless Expanse are new optional control tools whose effectiveness is still worth testing. At Diamond and Legend ranks, the deck's efficiency is 57%. Such an impressive result is achieved due to a large number of experiments on the ladder. This is a completely normal situation. Old archetypes with minimal updates work more predictably compared to experimental strategies. But the success of this deck is due to another important fact. Elemental Mage is extremely popular and Odin Warrior counters it perfectly. Based on the cost and win rate, the efficiency factor is 45%. This means that crafting this build is rather profitable. But do not forget that the situation can change very dynamically. The new metagame is just starting to take shape, but if you already have an Odin deck, you should give this updated version a try.
Mage continues to terrorize the metagame. The big spell archetype has passed the title of most annoying deck to the elemental strategy. This is the main archetype of the post-release period. The popularity of this build is insane. Almost 500,000 matches in a matter of days. Overall the archetype has many popular versions, but this one is slightly more effective at high ranks. Although it's worth noting that the win rate is gradually decreasing.
The main opponent of this strategy is Odin Warrior and the Death Knight archetypes. The new Synergy Core has allowed the old archetype to evolve to include fire spells in addition to elementals. This fact increases the flexibility of the strategy. An important drawback of the archetype was the lack of draw tools that worked in a predictable way. Blazing Accretion allows you to draw cards more actively. The main advantage of this build is the cost. The build is virtually free. You will only need one new legendary card. Moreover, it is unknown how effective Sarun will be. The card is very expensive and the effect has a delayed benefit. In matches against control archetypes, you can get an additional win condition, but it's not always guaranteed. In any case, a seemingly minor upgrade makes this strategy feel new. The efficiency factor is 89%. The impressive win rate at high ranks and the low cost make this deck almost a must-have, especially for free-to-play players. The old version of Orb Big Spell is still very effective, although less impactful.
Death Knight has a lot of variety at high ranks. You can keep using the old Buttons archetype or the new updated Rainbow strategy and a control archetype with 2 blood runes, but the most flexible deck is the new Rainbow Highlander build. This version of the archetype has all the tools you need to counter the craziest new experiments. A serious drawback is the roughly equal odds of winning matches against Odin Warrior, Elemental Mage and Druids in general. Against all other classes, you will have the advantage. I really like the flexibility of this deck, as you can find solutions to the most unexpected challenges. Overall, this build doesn't differ much from the old version, although a few new cards can have a significant impact on your victory. Exarch Maladar gives you a huge advantage and allows you to cheat the mana curve. Accumulate S-Orbses to get a chance to use powerful cards earlier and thus counter unexpected threats. The Ceaseless Expanse is a very good universal removal within the current metagame. Kol'Jaeden can greatly increase your chances of winning in certain scenarios, but is not a must-have card in this build. Note the interesting fact. There was no room for the Headless Horseman in the Rainbow Highlander deck. The Death Knight has so many powerful cards that there is not even a free slot for a hero card with a fairly powerful effect. The cost of the deck is unreasonable. You need 12 legendary cards and 2 epic cards to have about 54% win rate at high ranks. Efficiency factor is -30%, which means there is no logic in crafting this deck, but if you are a fan of the class and already have all the major old cards, the upgrade will be relatively cheap for you. Exarch Maladar deserves 1600 dust and will most likely be relevant to the class for a long time. The Ceaseless Expanse is a versatile card that has many usage scenarios, while Kol'Jaeden is an optional tool that you can skip.
Thus, we recommend newbies to ignore this build and veterans to experience the updated version on their own.
The Druid is represented at high ranks by 3 effective archetypes: Dunger, Spell Damage, and the new Starship strategy. Both old archetypes received a minor update. Arcanite Defense Crystal allows you to effectively use Oaken Summon spell. The player is forced to skip early turns, and this synergy allows you to guarantee a powerful 4th turn in the form of 12 armor and a creature with taunt. Moreover, after the creature dies, you get Starship, which can be immediately activated on turn 5 if you have no other options. Splitting Space Rock and Star Grazer, on the other hand, are powerful new targets for Thunderbringer and Travelmaster Dunger. Despite this, the deck still suffers from tempo and aggro decks. The large presence of elemental mages will be a problem for you. To be able to get a huge benefit from your cards, you will need the time that opponents with control archetypes can provide. The efficiency factor is 26%. This is not an impressive result for a relatively high cost. Overall, I really dislike the concept of decks like this. You're able to make incredibly powerful turns and reap a lot of benefits, but in addition to being able to plan your next move, you'll need a lot of luck, as the deck's efficiency is very dependent on key cards. Personally, I prefer more stable decks with less explosive potential.
A few words about Starship strategy. This is another example of the evolution of the Ramp archetype. The deck also uses the new interaction of Arcanite Defense Crystal and the Oaken Summon spell. Starship can be resurrected multiple times with the Hydration Station spell. This allows you to increase your life points against other control decks. The deck has many draw options, and Kol'Jaeden creates a new win condition in the late game. The efficiency factor is only 14%. This means that the build is not the most optimal for crafting. Overall, this is another deck that got a small upgrade but feels different. Hunters are experimenting with new cards as part of different strategies, but Mystery Egg is still the most effective. The archetype got a slight upgrade in the form of a new Discover core. Exarch Niel significantly improves your hero power, and the overall synergy allows you to make the Alien Encounters spell completely free. The efficiency factor is over 30%. This is another relatively expensive deck, but upgrading an old version to a new build is relatively cheap. Alien Encounters is a very good card that can be useful for a very long time. Investing 1600 dust may be worth it.
Pipsy Paladin unexpectedly broke into the top best decks a few days ago. This is actually an old version of the strategy that received a very minor upgrade. This build has not had time to gain widespread use, but its effectiveness is quite high at high ranks. The cost of upgrading the deck will also be minor, but in my opinion the usefulness of Lumia has yet to be proven. This is the only reason why we suggest you refrain from crafting this version of the deck.
Another surprise was the return of Wheel of Death. It feels like Kol'Jaeden was specifically designed for this strategy. The new cards had minimal impact on the archetype but allowed it to become competitive. At Diamond rank and Legendary rank the win rate is 52%, but the cost is once again the biggest drawback.
Let's revisit Death Knight once again, as we found an effective archetype at the last minute that became more prominent at high ranks. Starship Death Knight is the only brand new strategy on our list. Starship synergy is utilized 100% in this deck. Build a Starship, activate its death rattle with any cheap spell and summon huge threats, as well as increase your life points. Kol'Jaeden in this build is also an optional tool that is only good in certain scenarios.
The deck isn't insanely efficient, but it is predictable and stable and less dependent on specific cards. This build has given me the most positive vibes. If the previous decks got a fresh breath, this build offers a completely different gameplay experience. This elevator quickly became my favorite on this list.
The efficiency factor is only 13% as the deck is relatively expensive, but if you're a Death Knight fan and have already collected all the major cards of the archetype, the cost of crafting will be much more attractive. A few words about Shaman. Decks for this class did not make it into our list, although the effectiveness of the old version of the Nostalgia archetype is extremely high. In addition, the presence of the new spell damage archetype is gradually growing, but in our opinion this experiment has not yet proven its effectiveness to the fullest extent.
Guys, let me draw some conclusions. Based on the top, it seems that the most anticipated expansion, which contained a ton of new mechanics, brought only a revamp of old strategies to competitive play. At high ranks, the only completely new archetypes are Starship Death Knight and Quasar Rogue, which didn't even make it into our top due to its very low win rate. Yes, there's a lot of experimentation, but they are all too inconspicuous. Out of 145 new cards, only about 20 cards are really useful for high-ranked play, and that seems like a disaster. The Great Dark Beyond has every chance of being the set with the lowest impact in Hearthstone history. Guys, do you agree with my point of view?
Dora, it's very hard to argue with your arguments. The set's influence is currently not great, but the metagame is diverse, balanced and interesting. Personally, I find it interesting to explore new versions of builds. The abnormal popularity of Elemental Mage and Quasar Rogue in the early days after release led to the formation of a control competitive environment. The popularity of the leaders is gradually declining and the meta is adapting to the new realities. The control meta forces me to make more strategic decisions, plan my turns, and look for countermeasures to threats more often. You and your opponent have approximately the same amount of resources and your task is to manage them more wisely.
The archetypes are in a conditional balance. There is no strategy that dominates in terms of efficiency. The almost complete absence of aggressive decks has led to the fact that the game no longer resembles rock paper scissors. This means that your decisions have a greater influence on the outcome of the match. But there are important drawbacks: very long matches and very high cost. This Hearthstone will definitely not appeal to all players, but it's a new feeling and we think it's very cool. But the coolest thing is that the meta continues to evolve and new strategies are gradually starting to form. Yes, this time this process is happening much slower, but we can't call the new set a failure. We still hope for the gradual emergence of a large number of new strategies. We like the current state of affairs, but the novelty effect of upgrading old strategies may soon wear off.
But most likely for this to happen we should expect buffs or nerfs. What do you think? What are your impressions of the current metagame? Are you worried about the lack of new ways to play? Share your thoughts in the comments and join the polls in the community tab.
Traditionally, we want to express our boundless gratitude to our sponsors.
Dear friends, your help is invaluable. We will be grateful for any support.
Okay, that's all for today. Thank you for spending this time with us. We really hope that we will have the opportunity to get in touch in the next video.
Take care of yourself.
And never give up.
Job's done.